So I will present a short overview of a systematic review that was done inside the project. So about the importance of coaches and parents for inclusion and diversity in children's sports teams. Okay, how do I... okay. So this was the first output in our project that was prepared and followed by these questionnaires with the coaches, parents, directors, and interviews with experts, focus groups. So all of the stated led to allowed us to recognize the needed competences that we then developed the materials for, called the Educational Tools for Coaches and Directors and a School for Parents, which is currently being implemented in some of the countries. So the aim of the report was to get an overview of the recent state of research concerning inclusion and diversity in grassroots sports for children under 12, and it was a stepping stone for the development of the educational tools. The research questions that we tried to answer in this report were: how can the competitive aspect be oriented to a more educational approach in sports for children under 12? How can sport skills be taught without the competitive aspect? How can diverse and inclusive teams be created? And lastly, how can parents be engaged in this new approach? So the literature was identified, checked, and the report was written by our partners, so the International Council of Sports Science and Physical Education, so by Detlef and his team. We provided the literature in our languages, so the search was done in 5 different languages, and from approximately 700 articles and other documents, 78 were included in the final version of the report. On the right side, you can see the keywords search that was used in the English and German language. So the results show that although the right of all people to engage in sporting activities has been widely recognized for now a lot of years, there's still a lack of empirical studies concerning the didactical considerations for inclusive physical activity in grassroots sport. There are several studies about the positive effects of physical activity for children with disabilities, but fewer can be found about the positive effects of inclusive sports activities for athletes with and without disabilities. There are several projects that aim at developing and testing inclusive sport club structures by investigating the possibilities, but also the barriers for the development. But most studies are concerned with inclusion in physical education. So studies about inclusion in extracurricular activities are relatively rare. There is, however, a new trend rising towards increased research activity on inclusion in the area of grassroots sport. The authors of the report divided the results in these 4 thematic sections. So about studies about inclusion and competition, about the reduction of competitive aspects and alternatives for competition in inclusive sport settings, about implementation strategies for diverse and inclusive sport teams, and about involvement of parents. So I will just present a short overview of quite an extensive report. This is some studies that concern the impact of competitions in inclusive sport programs, where thinking in dichotomy and the question of comparability arises. So in the context of competitions of the high performance level, inclusion as social participation is opposing the objective comparability of performance, authors say. They also claim that strong exclusive tendencies and acceptance of group bias, social hierarchies become visible, especially when the focus is on results in a competition. There is an example of a German program called Fußballfreunde, where players with and without handicaps participate, and they expressed experiencing joy, equal participation, social improvements like cohesion, self-confidence, fairness, respect, a friendly atmosphere, and so on. But especially with children without handicaps, so-called partners, they express that competition plays an important part for them, and several expressed that it was quite difficult to deal with the negative emotions that arise and a lack of technical skills of players with handicaps. Another set of studies concerned the significance of competition in sports on the development of children, so irrespective of inclusion, where we know that peer comparison is quite natural during the youth development, but authors say that parents and coaches need to understand the child's perception of competition to make this participation in sports more meaningful. So this includes knowledge about the prior experiences, the maturity, the motivation of young athletes. There are, of course, also positive effects of competition for everyone. So the authors of a study found an increase in self-perception, so assuming the athlete consider himself, herself competent, a sense of purpose, given a responsibility, and learning life lessons that are connected to the results of the competition. In the second theme, some alternative approaches on inclusive sports can be found by de-emphasizing the competitive aspects to accommodate these developmental goals of children. There are several programs that present strategies for an enjoyable, playful sports environment rather than a competitive one. The authors really emphasize the importance of establishing a positive motivation in children, so to give them a positive push by creating a task-oriented climate, rewarding positive efforts and behaviors of athletes, and developing and reflecting an appropriate game and practice goals. The second set is about alternative approaches to a competitive sports setting. So there are some examples described in the report, the so-called easy play model, the 6+1 model, give us back our game, where they modify the rules, the tasks, the environment, materials, social forms, communication within the games. For example, the easy play model works on three characteristics. So it's about optimal competitiveness. So the play environment supports skill development of less skilled players while also offering opportunities for high skilled players to be challenged. And this is attained by greater task orientation. The second principle is called play easy on each other and hard for each other, where they try to develop personal skills in a cooperative and enjoyable environment. And lastly, it's also about self-regulation. So it's about fairness without the help of referees. So they all work together. The players compete in teams which are continuously rearranged within the group to ensure balanced games. In the third topic, there are some studies concerning implementation strategies of inclusion and also including a comprehensive training of coaches. So the research shows that inclusive playing environment can be achieved by accommodating and recognizing the continuum of player ability. So in a way that the easy play model is, so but modifying the rules and size of the field and so on, and also by eliminating this classification into athletes with and without this disability. One of the examples how this can be achieved is the so-called reverse integration sports, so where the people can do several different sports while all in wheelchairs. The need for qualification of coaches arises in the literature in the field of inclusion, of course, and also for developing the methodology and, of course, the didactics in sports. One of the systematic reviews also provided some didactics ideas for coaches in inclusive environments. So they need to have basic attitude open to diversity. They need to have specific methodological know-how and the ability to adapt content to the need of a specific constellation of children and young people with or without disabilities. And lastly, we have some studies about the involvement of parents, where studies describe the recommendations, considerations for parents that are a part of inclusive sport programs, some experiences and ideologies of parents, and effects of parental engagement on children. The parental role can be seen in the transition from the separate physical activity programs to inclusive settings, where they need to acquire new roles, relationship routines, For example, a transition from a parent with no responsibilities beyond transportation to a parent with a participatory role. So the things that we were just talking about in the questions sections. So fitness buddies can be for their children or attending the program themselves. The parents should also have appropriate expectations of young athletes, provide specific constructive feedbacks, accept their children no matter the results, of course, and believe the success is based on effort and progress and not the scores. The importance of positive relationship and of coaches and parents is also emphasized, where clear expectations have to be provided and a consistent and fair behavior on the coach towards the parents, regardless of the abilities of the child. I would also say that it goes vice versa. But there is a lack of empirical studies concerning parental involvement in inclusive sport programs. There is an example from the evaluations of inclusive sport program called Fußballfreunde, where parents reported that there was a lack of public perception of the project and the promotion on the local level, but they also expressed experiencing enjoyment, and they saw participation, acceptance of their children, as well as a change of the children's attitudes. So to conclude, the results showed us the significance of the need for de-emphasizing competitive aspects, also the significance of comprehensive competences needed for coaches regarding inclusion, a good parent-coach relationship needed, a positive and supporting involvement of parents, and also, last but not least, the need to support the parents in doing so. So there are a lot of data presented also already from my side, but for more information, you can look at the websites of every partner included in this project and read more about it. Thank you.